Organizing documents. Using layers in Photoshop is fundamental to how the program works. For the next 2 weeks, we'll discuss layers, masks, and how they facilitate a non-destructive workflow. At the most basic level, layers help us manage design elements. The Layers panel makes it easy to work on small or large details of an image, but this ease of use comes at a price. The price of being and staying organized. Let's go over a few layer basics. You can select a layer you want to work on by single-clicking on the name. You can rename a layer by double-clicking on its name. You can add a new blank layer by clicking on the plus icon at the bottom of the Layers panel. New layers will stack on the uppermost selected layer. You can reverse Uno this by holding down Command on the Mac or Control on Windows while pressing the plus. This will place the layer below the lowest selected layer. And I guarantee your friends won't know this quirk. Most people will probably assume you hold down Alt or Option, which is usually the do the opposite key in Adobe apps. But in this case, pressing Alt Option while clicking the plus only brings up a new layer dialog box. You can delete a layer by selecting it in the Layers panel and then pressing the trash icon. Alternatively, you can drag a layer to the trash can icon. Similarly, you can duplicate a layer by dragging it to the plus icon. The space to the left of the layer preview icon controls visibility of that layer. You can click in that area to toggle it from one state to the other. If there is no eyeball, the layer will be hidden and inactive. If there is an eyeball, the layer will be visible. Background isn't really a layer because you can't move it around like a layer. It's just a set of opaque pixels at the bottom of the canvas. If you don't want this, you can easily convert a background to a regular layer by clicking on the lock icon to the right of the word background. Just to make sure we aren't confused, Photoshop helpfully renames background to layer 0. A pixel layer is just what it sounds like, a layer that has pixels on it. It is the most basic layer in Photoshop. It's an honest layer doing an honest job. Other layers may trick you into thinking they're doing neat vector tricks, but at the end of the day, anything in Photoshop will be rendered as pixels. Adjustment layers are layers that apply effects to adjust the layers below them in different ways. In the Layers panel, you can identify an adjustment layer by the icon that represents the type of adjustment linked to a mask. Here are all the different adjustment icons. Type is a special layer that lets you use the fonts on your computer to type things in Photoshop. You can identify this by the T icon in the Layers panel. If you double-click on this icon, Photoshop automatically changes to the Type tool and selects all the text on that layer. If you only want to edit the text, perhaps to correct a word, you can position the IB mouse pointer inside the text and then click. Also, Photoshop helpfully names the layer with what you type. It will even update the name if you edit the text layer. You can override this behavior by manually naming the text layer. But why would you do that? A fill layer will let you fill a layer with a solid color, gradient, or pattern. You can double-click on the icon to edit the color, gradient, or pattern. This layer will fill the entire canvas, but you can use a mask if you want to limit it to only certain areas. Or you could clip it to the layer below by clicking while hovering between the layers and holding Alt or Option to have it cover only the pixels in that layer. The rest will be transparent. A shape layer is a way of getting a vector object in a layer in Photoshop. You can identify this by the vector icon in the lower right side of the layer thumbnail. Photoshop has native objects that are vector-based, such as rectangle, polygon, and the ellipse tools, It also has an assortment of custom shapes, such as wild animals and flowers. You can also use a variety of pen tools to create shape layers. You do need to select shape from the options bar at the top of the screen before you start. Otherwise, Photoshop will, by default, create a path. Paths do not appear in the Layers panel. They are relegated to the Paths panel instead. A smart object is identified by the little icon in the lower right corner of the layer thumbnail. You can convert a layer to a smart object by right-clicking on it and choosing Convert to Smart Object, or by going to the Filter menu and selecting Convert for Smart Filters. So once we have all these different types of layers, how do we manage them? Let's look at a few techniques to maintain sanity while working with layers in Photoshop. Creating layer groups is easy. Click on the top layer for the group, shift-click on the bottom layer for the group, and then click the folder icon at the bottom of the panel. So let's create a few layers here in Photoshop. We'll start with a shape layer, so I'll click on the rectangle tool, and we'll make sure that it's set to shape instead of path or pixels. And let's draw a square. And you'll notice that I didn't have to create a layer for this. When you use the shape tool, it'll create a layer for you. Next, we want to do some pixels. So I'll just click on the plus so I can get that on its own layer. And we'll switch to the brush. And I'm gonna brush with red. And then I'll use the bracket keys to increase the size of the brush. And then we'll just dab around here a little bit. Perfect. All right, next, let's put some type. So I'll switch to the type tool. And then as soon as I click, you'll notice in the layers panel, we have a new layer. And it just says layer 2 because I haven't typed anything yet. So let me type, this is cool. Oh, it looks like I probably should have changed my color first because I can't see anything. So let's go to the little, I select it all, and then I'll click on the little swatch here, and we'll choose black for that. And it looks kind of small, so I'm going to go up to my font size list, and we'll go to 72 point. And then that's the right size, but I need to move it to a better position. So I'll change the move tool and then move that into place. So right. And now let's create another pixel layer above that. And we'll create another, switch to the brush. And let's choose a different color. Let's choose blue, light blue. And we will go to the hard round brush. All right. So now we want to group some of these layers. Let's group these 3 layers here. We have a little swash, and then we have the text layer, and then we have layer 1, which is the red triangle. So I'll click on the first one, and then I'm holding down Shift. I click on layer 1, and then just click on this little folder to make those go into a group. Okay, great. Now, if I wanted to move all of these together, I could. So I don't have to select them all. I'll turn off Auto Select Layer so that I have to actually select what I want to select in the Layers panel. But once I have that, I don't have to worry about, oh, am I moving the wrong thing? But sometimes you want to turn on Auto Select just for convenience. For the most part, I find that my default is to leave it off. Because part of staying organized is you're always working in the Layers panel anyway. Sometimes you'll create a layer in Photoshop and then forget to put something on it. Or perhaps you previously had something on a layer, but used the eraser to remove it. Wouldn't it be nice to find all those empty layers and delete them so your layers panel is less cluttered. It turns out that Photoshop has a filter at the top of the layers panel. It's normally set to kind, which will let you show only certain types of layers, pixel, adjustment, type, etc. You can also set the filter to display layers that have certain attributes. So one thing you'll notice is I always had to press the plus to create a new pixel layer. And what that will eventually run into is that you're creating layers and then you forgot whether you have something on it. So you created another layer. So I have layer 3, layer 4. I forget which one was empty, so I might as well create another layer. Okay, so we'll paint on that one. And I'll move that below the rectangle. There we go. And let's change to a different color. And switch to the brush. And there we go. All right, that looks nice, but I look at my layers panel, I'm like, uh-oh, looks like I have some extra layers. So this is kind of an exaggeration, but imagine that I have 98 layers and I want to get a little more sanity back in my life. Going through and visually looking at the layers panel, it might be difficult to tell which layers have nothing or have a very small object on them. So Photoshop has a built-in function to take care of that kind of situation. We change from kind to attribute, and then we change from visible to empty. And this will show us all the empty layers. And we can just highlight those and move them to the trash. And then it looks like our layers panel is empty, but it's not. We just need to change this back to kind. And there we go. So now it's showing us all our layers, and all of them have something on it. You'll notice that even though the background is empty, the background is pure white. So it's filled with white pixels. So that's why when we changed the attribute to empty, it didn't show us the background. Number one, the background isn't a layer. And number two, it actually does have pixels. Grouping organizes layers into a folder. For this to work, the layers must be adjacent. Linking lets you move and transform layers together, and the layers don't have to be adjacent. Okay, so let's create a new layer above the group, and then we'll change the color again. We'll use the brackets to make this a little smaller. Now I want a layer 6 and layer 5 to stay together. So you would think, oh, you could just group those. But what happens when we group those? Selecting non-contiguous layers, you hold down the Command or Control key, and that'll allow you to select both of them. If I press the Group button, oh, look what happens. It actually moves all the layers up. So that's not what I want. So I'll Command Z to undo that, and let's figure out a different way. What we can do is go to the bottom of the panel and click on this little link icon there, and it will link these two layers. And so what that does is when we select one of the layers, you'll notice that this little link icon pops up and it shows us all the layers that this layer is linked to. When we select another layer, those link icons go away. This is because you can have multiple layers linked to different other layers. So they only want to show you the ones that are linked to your currently selected layer. Just because it can get very chaotic if all of your layers are linked to other layers. So this way, this shows you, oh, here are the two layers that when you want to move it or transform it, these will move or transform together. And then you can resize it. There you go. Perfect. And so these are linked, kind of giving you the same functionality that you get with grouped layers. The trick to keeping your layers panel organized is to follow a simple set of disciplines. First, name your layers as you go. And second, group related layers and name the group, of course. Sometimes you'll find that you don't need to have objects on separate layers. So you'd like to combine them to create a new single pixel layer. To merge a layer to the one below it, you'd select the top layer and press Command or Control E. You can repeat this if you need to merge a set of layers. To merge all visible layers, you'd add the Shift key. So you'd press Shift and Command or Control E. If you just want to flatten all the layers, you can go to the hamburger menu and from the Layers panel and select Flatten Image. Now, the difference between Merge Visible and Flatten Image is that Flatten Image will create a background image with no transparent pixels. With Merge Visible, provided there is no background in your Layers panel, your image will maintain its transparent pixels. So let's say I want to merge this rectangle 1 to the layer 5. I'll just select the rectangle 1, and then I'll go to the hamburger menu and choose Merge Down, or I can press Command or Control E. And that will merge them together just on one layer. Now, let's say we want to merge all of these onto a new transparent layer. So we'll hold down Shift, and I'll select all the layers, and then we'll choose Merge Layers. That will also merge those all. Let's say I didn't have a background layer, so I'll just click on the lock to change that from a background to a regular layer, and then I'll drag that layer to the trash. Okay, so now I have a transparent background, and what we want to do is keep that transparent background, but we want just everything all on one layer. So I will select all of them and choose Merge Visible. And you'll notice it's still got that transparent layer, but it's just on one layer by itself and there's no background. Now, the other option in the panel that you might have been tempted to use is Flatten Image. So if I click on Flatten Image from the hamburger menu, look what happens. We now have a background. So this means there is no transparency anymore on this image. We have a white background. So working with layers is great, but as we know, with great power comes great responsibility. Even if it's a shape or type layer, which are vector-based, Photoshop creates a pixel version of that layer behind the scenes when it saves the file. This is done for speed and compatibility reasons. Smart objects are treated the same way. Even if you resize the same smart object on multiple layers, each layer will have its own pixel version created behind the scenes.